You and I clinically, we kind of operate in the no man's land, meaning that people may have not been extreme enough, as you mentioned, to get the clinical diagnoses. I mean, the same thing happens with celiac, right? They'll say that you have to have something crazy like 95% tissue destruction in the intestines to be considered celiac. But if you're like 94%, they say you're not celiac, go eat some bread. It's fine. So it's very interesting point you made. And we've actually had clients report this too, where they'll say that their pulse rate or their heartbeat only increased by maybe 20 or 25 beats upon standing. And they were told clinically it had to be 30 beats. So if you're 28 beats, you're still not POTS. If you're 30 beats, increase your POTS. And so that's the problem, is there's this huge in-between area where people have these symptoms, but then they go to their doctor and they're basically going to get told that everything is fine and there's really nothing we can do for you. Or possibly what they'll do, if it was moderate enough, but maybe not clinically diagnosed on paper, maybe they do a beta blocker because they say, okay, I understand you're standing up, you're having heart palpitations, you're having chest pain. Let's go ahead and do this metoprolol or other beta blocker to try to calm the symptoms. But then you never actually fix the adrenals, you never support the hormones, you never fix the minerals, and all of that still goes unaddressed. And then, of course, you get the side effects of the drug, and then you create more problems. So you see how this could be a really big slippery slope. And then also one thing I want to mention too, because I experienced it personally, was you mentioned like the dizziness and that kind of stuff, but also just mental fog. I mean, if you don't have enough nutrients, enough blood flow, you just feel kind of spacey. So if you're having trouble with focus, a lot of times you and I are looking on like an organic acids test to try to look at dopamine or other neurotransmitter problems. But this whole dysautonomia POTS thing could also create brain fog. So that's just something else that we're going to be looking for and trying to address.
Yeah. So typically with POTS is you're going to have a combination of a drop in blood pressure, right? So conventional medicine diagnosis is looking at a 20 millimeter drop in mercury on the blood pressure cuff on the systolic. That's the top number. And then about a 10 or more on the bottom number. So if it's normally 120 over 80, you got to be at, below 100 over 70, if you will. Okay. And that's in the first couple of minutes of that change in body position. And then typically as the blood pressure drops, now you're not able to move as much blood. And so what has to happen is your heart rate has to increase to compensate for the lack of pressure. And so as the heart rate increases, that's where you start to see the increase in heart rate. That's where the postural orthostatic, that's the change in body position, tachycardia, that means faster heart rate. And so that's where you start to feel your heart beating out of its chest. Okay. And so then you have the drop in blood pressure on one side and the increase in heart rate on the other side. So the first thing we look at from a functional medicine perspective, where are we and where are we at with hydration? Okay. Are we getting enough water and hydration in? Number two, is that full spectrum mineral water? Are we getting a really good mineral water? Are we adding additional minerals to it? And then number three, where are we at with diuretics, coffee, tea, things that have caffeine? Because coffee or tea, number one, will increase adrenaline, right? And adrenaline is part of this whole POTS cascade. So increased adrenaline, increased cortisol can always increase the heart rates, but it also acts more as a diuretic where you pee more water out. That drops your blood pressure. And then when you drop the water, you drop the minerals, and your heart needs sodium and chloride and magnesium in your minerals to function. Remember, magnesium is a natural beta blocker. And so if we can get the minerals in, that brings the blood pressure up because water follows minerals. And if we can get minerals in that relax the heart, because magnesium is a natural beta blocker, right? And so that can really help start to relax the heart, but you got to fix the underlying issue. And so you got to really get, and that's just a couple of lifestyle diet strategies out of the gates. We'll talk more specifically, but anyone that has POTS or POTS symptoms, we have to really look at the adrenals. And you may not necessarily have an Addison's issue where your cortisol's pathologically low, right? Or Cushing's where it's pathologically high, and maybe some kind of an imbalance in between. That's why we use the word adrenal dysfunction, because some people are high in the morning, low at night, and vice versa. So it may not be high throughout the day or low throughout the day. You could be somewhere in between. And so we really got to look at these things and test it and quantify and see exactly where you're at.
Yeah, great point.